In the first example, we had a simple gradebook class with a display message method that displayed a hard-coded string of text. In this example, we're going to slightly modify class gradebook's display message method to receive a parameter. And the reason for doing that is often methods of a class will need to receive data to be able to perform their tasks correctly. So this version of the gradebook that you can now see on the screen here has a display message method once again, but in this case we've gone ahead and provided a parameter named course name of type string. And by the way, the keyword string that's part of the language is actually just a representation for the class named string from the .NET Framework's system namespace. So anytime you see lowercase s string, it's really the capital S string class that's being used in C#. Now, for this display message method, we're going to take the course name that's provided as an argument when this method gets called, and we're going to include it as part of the output in lines 10 and 11. So we'll now say welcome to the gradebook 4, then we have a \n to drop to the next line, and you can see we have a placeholder for an argument, course name, and the value of the course name, whatever that is, will be substituted for the curly braced 0 that you see in the format string on line 10. And again, format strings may consist of both literal characters and format specifiers. So the class itself hasn't changed substantially. We're just showing you that you can indeed define your own methods with parameters. If you had more than one parameter, by the way, you'd put a comma here, and then you'd have another type name and variable name for the next parameter in the parameter list. Going over to our gradebook test class now, it's a little bit more elaborate because not only do we need to create a gradebook object to interact with, we also need a course name that we can pass into the display message method. So first thing we did here in main in our gradebook test class is create a new gradebook object. And again, every time you want to create an object of a class, you use the new operator followed by the class name. And for now, we'll use an empty set of parentheses, but we're going to show you a concept, a couple of examples from now, called a constructor that allows you to specify custom initialization for an object. For now, we'll get default initialization, and we'll talk more about that later. So we have our gradebook object. The next thing we do at line 15 is prompt the user to enter the course name. And then at line 16, we use the console.readLine method, which you learned about in the preceding lesson, to read a line of text from the user. And one of the nice things about the IDE, which I showed you in the preceding lesson as well, when you hover over a method, it tells you what that method does and tells you the return type as well. So you can see here that console.readLine is going to return a string containing the next line of characters from the standard input stream, the keyboard by default. So that value will be assigned to the new variable that we're declaring here, the name of course variable, which has the data type string. So it's going to refer to an object of class string. And after we read that line of text, we do call console.writeLine with no arguments, which simply says move the output cursor to the next line. And then finally, at line 21, we're now talking to the myGradebook object that was created back here at line 12. And we're telling it once again to display its message by calling the display message method, but this time we have to give it a string as an argument. And just to demonstrate what happens if I remove name of course, so if I leave an empty set of parentheses, now it says that the display message method is supposed to be receiving a string argument representing the course name, and there's no overload for display message that takes 0 arguments. What that means is there's no display message method defined with an empty set of parentheses for its parameter list. So let me go ahead and put that string back in here. So now when I go and run this program, first of all we can see please enter the course name. So let's say we do CS 101 Intro to C# Programming. And when I press enter, it skips a line because of the console.writeLine call with empty parentheses. And here is the result of us calling the display message method for class gradebook on the myGradebook object. Now, just as I did in the preceding example, I'm going to go ahead and run this program in the debugger to show you the transfer of the information contained in name of course into the display message method. So let's go ahead and run this with the debugger now. And as you can see, it's asking me for a course name. So again, I'll type CS 101, Intro to C# Programming. Whoops. And now it shows me the line of code that's about to execute. And as of right now, down here in the locals window, it's showing me the variables that are part of main. We've got args, which is from the parameter list of main. We've got myGradebook, which was created here at line 12. And we have name of course, which was created here at line 16. And by the way, for name of course, notice that it's showing me the actual value of that variable, and in addition it's also showing you the types of the variables here as well, which can be handy as you're debugging your program. It also, on the right side here, shows me the function call stack or the method call stack, indicating that the gradebook test class's main method is currently about to execute line 21. And when I step into that method call, we will then see the call stack window update to show that the display message method is now being executed. So let me step into the display message call. Now you can see that the top of the stack is the display message method, and you can see down here in the locals window that all of the variables from main have gone away, and instead we see the course name parameter here, which, by the way, when I hover over it, it shows me the value of that parameter right there in a tooltip. In fact, you can pin this tooltip up on the screen if you want to keep the value displayed at all times right there in the text editor. So that can be handy when you're debugging as well. And you can see here I can unpin it by clicking that pin icon. So we're about to execute display message, so I'll go ahead and step over. Now we're going to execute the write line method. Now if I stop there and just switch to the output window, we can see that the message was indeed displayed. And again, if I continue by stepping back into main, now it's showing me once again in the locals window the variables that are currently in scope inside of function main. We can see that we've returned from the display message method, so the call stack now contains only main, and now we're about to end the program's execution, at which point the IDE returns to editing mode instead of debugging mode. So the main difference in this example was just showing you that indeed a method of a class can have parameters and receive arguments from its caller. And what we've seen in these first two examples is a common setup when you're first learning how to do object-oriented programming, where you have one file that contains the class that you're designing and testing, and a separate class that's used for the purpose of testing the first class. You might refer to the gradebook test class as a test harness for checking the capabilities of class gradebook. In the next example, we're going to start taking a look at placing data into the gradebook class so that every gradebook can maintain its own course name.